lecture because I love my name Jaydev and you are carrying the 1/4 of my name Jayprakash. So naturally, I'm sure that your lecture will be quite memorable. So most welcome and all the best, Dr. Jayprakash. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir. Truly, we will be ever obliged for this enlightenment. Now, may I request Sanjeev Kumar Sahu, sir, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to introduce us with the theme of today's talk. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Arya. So, esteemed Vice Chancellor of Kalahandi University, who is going to join the session shortly. Esteemed Chairperson of PG Council and Head of the Department, Major Dr. Jaydev Sahu sir, my colleagues of the department, and my dear students.
Sanjeev, I am there from the beginning. Sir has joined already.
Sorry, sir. So, thank you very much, sir. So, once again, I welcome sir also to this talk. It's a very distinct privilege for me to give a preface to the talk that our friend, my and Jana Madam's friend, is going to deliver today. So, to establish the objective behind this talk or this lecture today, I'll tell 2 points. And it has become a part of the department under the able guidance of, under the patronage of Honorable Vice Chancellor sir, and under the leadership of Jaydev sir to invite such elite scholars and teachers from different parts of the society to interact with our students and guide them also. The 2 points that I want to make as an preface to this talk is, first, literature study took a different tone with the emergence of cultural and social theories in the late 19th and 20th century. And these critical and literary theories are being used as lenses to establish to understand the greater role of literature in the society. And literature study, henceforth, is not an isolated study, and it is not only studied for aesthetic pleasure and recreations, which used to be in the earlier centuries. And we study literature as a site to understand the various social and cultural phenomena and the power structures and the forces that influence this creation of these writings. And my second point is that when I and Charana Madam are talking, who will be the right person to orient our students with the idea of popular literature and how it intersects with other disciplines, with other subjects. The name that come to our minds is Jayprakash Mishra, because he himself studied literature in his graduation, did his post-graduation from Utkal University, and then he went to do his PhD program from IIT Hyderabad, and where he worked on cultural studies in the liberal arts department, and he wrote a very important thesis on the kind of kinship that exists among the gay men in Odisha. So when Jarana Madam will be introducing the speaker, he can elaborate on his area of interest and his research work. And even in the new education policy, even the CBCS syllabus also that we have in our UG and PG program, it encourages students to go interdisciplinary studies. So in UG, students generally go for generic elective, and in our PG we offer open elective papers, where the students go to other departments to learn and how their discipline of literature intersects with sociology, anthropology, other branches of studies, other allied subjects. So with this note, I welcome once again Jayprakash, and over to Ari.
Thank you so much, sir, for such a beautiful introduction. Now it's time to know about our esteemed speaker. So, may I request Dr. Jharna ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of English, for introduction of our esteemed speaker. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, dear Aya. Good afternoon, one and all present here. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Kalahandi University, esteemed PG Council Chairperson and Head of the Department of English, Kalahandi University, my colleagues, research scholars, friends, and my dear students. It is always very, very special moment for me. I mean, it's a special moment for everybody to introduce one's friend of nearly 17 years. So I'm extremely elated to have got this opportunity to introduce my dearest friend, Jayprakash Mishra. So currently, he is an assistant professor at Thapa University, at the Thapa School of Liberal Arts and Sciences. Jayprakash Mishra completed his PhD in Cultural Studies and Anthropology in the Department of Liberal Arts at Indian Institute of Technology, Hyderabad, where its research focused on gay men married to women and how they negotiate with the social institution of marriage and family. Drawing on ethnographic accounts of gay men in mixed orientation marriage from the eastern Indian state of Odisha, he examines how they situate themselves in the position of ambivalence to reconfigure the normative kinship structure, simultaneously contesting the Western modes of family of choice. His research interests are located in the intersection of cultural studies and literary studies, anthropology, and he is particularly interested in non-normative family, intimacies, and friendship in South Asia. Another caveat of his research interest is in fiction, cinema, and popular culture, about which he is going to deliver this lecture. And he recently finished working on a project on disability care and family, where the research group interviewed caregivers of people in the autism spectrum to understand their experience generally, but also particularly during COVID 19. Some of the future research he is currently speculating are queering reproduction, media, and autism, a textbook on popular culture and experiences of South Asia in the diaspora broadly. He has published numerous papers in various Scopus Index journals, and he has been invited to present his work at some of the leading US universities, including Princeton University, Stanford University, and Brandeis University. He is recently elected as the co-chair for the European Network of Queer Anthropology, EASA network, under which they will organize a workshop and a conference panel funded by EASA. So without further delay, I invite Dr. Mishra to deliver his talk. Over to you, Jayprakash.
Thank you so much, Jarna, for this very generous introduction. I'm going to take a moment and share my screen because I have a PowerPoint presentation to make. Okay. All right. I'm going to do it full screen. Okay. It's visible, right?
Yes, it is.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I want to begin by thanking PG Department of English, Kalahandi University for this opportunity to share my work. I'm absolutely delighted to be here, and I look forward to your question and comments after the talk. So in this talk today, I'm hoping to do two things. One is to introduce the students to the question of how popular culture is an important side of contestation and subversion, and how anthropological methods can help us understand and address these questions effectively. The second thing I want to do in this talk is to take you through a course I taught to undergraduate literary and cultural studies major last year. And through this exercise, I want to demonstrate how popular culture is a fertile ground to uncover and examine some of the big questions around society, culture, politics, and the complex identities and experiences their entanglements produce. Just to flag a few points in the interest of time and scope of this presentation, I will not delve deep into the some of the major classical theoretical debates on popular culture. Rather, my talk focuses more on contemporary conversation around social and political lives of popular culture. So, you will not see me dropping names of key figures, but I'll be probably speaking more about concepts and phenomenon in the present time. Uh, so let's begin by asking this very sort of rudimentary yet very pertinent question, as what is popular culture? So popular culture refers to cultural products and practices that are widely shared and consumed by a society's general population. This can include music, film, television, fashion, sports, and other forms of entertainment and leisure activities. So the history of popular culture is closely tied to the rise of industrialization and mass media in the 19th and early 20th century, late 19th and early 20th century. The development of new technologies such as the phonograph, radio, and television enabled the widespread dissemination of cultural products and helped to create a mass audience for popular culture. In fact, in the United States, the emergence of popular culture coincided with the growth of consumer culture and the rise of advertising. This led to the commodification of cultural products and the development of global entertainment industry that continues to dominate contemporary culture. Now, the relationship between popular culture and society is very complex and rather multifaceted. On the one hand, popular culture can reflect and reinforce dominant cultural norms and values. For example, um, popular music and television often perpetuate gender and racial stereotypes, and fashion trends can reinforce social hierarchies based on wealth and status. But on the other hand, popular culture can also serve as a site of resistance and subversion, providing a space for the marginalized groups to express themselves and challenge dominant marginal, dominant cultural norms. For example, hip hop culture emerged as a form of resistance to a social and economic marginalization in African American communities, while the punk movement in the 1970s was a reaction against the mainstream culture of consumerism and conformity. So, the relationship between popular culture and society is dynamic and constantly evolving, reflecting ongoing changes in technology, economics, politics, and culture. Now, to understand more about popular culture, let's take a look at what is high culture and low culture. Now, high culture is typically uh, these are two concepts which have been extensively discussed in cultural studies, which is a field of study that explores the relationship between culture and society. Now, the distinction between high culture and low culture refers to the classification of cultural objects, practices, and values into two broad categories based on their perceived level of quality, sophistication, and social status. Now, high culture, it is typically associated with elite and dominant groups in society, such as the upper class, upper caste intellectual elites, and refers to cultural objects, practices, and values that are considered to be of high quality, intellectually demanding, and culturally valuable. So, some of the examples of high culture might include classical music, opera, literature, fine arts, and philosophy. But on the other hand, low culture is often associated with popular or mass media, mass culture, and refers to cultural objects, practices, and values that are considered to be low quality, commercially driven, and lacking in intellectual depth. For example, low culture include popular music, television shows, comics books, and video games. So the distinction between high and low culture has been subject to debate in cultural studies, with some scholars arguing that it is an artificial and arbitrary binary that reflects social hierarchies and power relations. For example, Pierre Bourdieu, a French sociologist and cultural theorist, argues in his book Distinction, a social critique of judgment of taste, that the classification of cultural practices into high and low is a way of reinforcing social class distinctions and perpetuating cultural elitism. Similarly, Stuart Hall, a British cultural theorist, argues that the distinction between high and low culture is a product of the historical development of capitalism, which has led to the commodification of culture and the creation of mass consumer culture that is dominated by the commercial interests. So, in nutshell, the distinction between high culture and low culture is a complex and contested concept in cultural studies, and while it can be a useful tool in understanding cultural landscape and social hierarchy in society, it is also equally important to critically examine the underlying power relations and cultural politics that shape these classifications. Now, how is popular culture related to mass culture? The distinction between high culture and low culture is often related to concept of mass culture. Uh, so mass culture refers to cultural products that are produced and distributed on a large scale and are intended for mass audience. This can include popular music, television, films, and other forms of popular entertainment. Mass culture is often seen as being distinct from high culture, which is associated with elite, highbrow cultural forms such as opera, ballet, and classical music. This distinction has been a topic of debate in cultural studies, with some scholars arguing that it is a false dichotomy that obscures the complex ways in which cultural forms are produced, consumed, and valued. For example, Raymond Williams, a key figure in cultural studies, argued that the distinction between high and low culture was historically contingent and was shaped by social and economic factors. He argued that the development of mass culture was related to the rise of industrial capitalism and emergence of new forms of media and technology. Williams argued that the emergence of mass culture challenged the dominance of high culture and created new forms of cultural expression that were accessible to wider audience. Similarly, Stuart Hall, another influential scholar in cultural studies, argued that the distinction between high and low culture was not fixed and stable, but was constantly being negotiated and redefined through cultural practices and social relations. So, in summary, while some scholars see the distinction between high and low culture as false dichotomy, others argue that it is a historically contingent and socially constructed category that is constantly being redefined through cultural practices and social relations. Now, why is it important to study popular culture? It's important to study popular culture for several reasons. First, several reasons. Studying popular culture is important because it provides insight into social, cultural, and political factors that shape society. It helps us understand the ways in which culture influences our beliefs and attitudes, provides insights into creative processes that shape culture, and illuminates the ways in which culture interact and exchange ideas in global context. Uh, Popular culture, in fact, let's now take a look, spend some time discussing how popular culture can be a site for contestation and subversion. So, popular culture can be a mutual site for contestation and subversion due to its ability to challenge dominant ideology and norms in the society. Through its various forms such as music, films, television, social media, popular culture can challenge and subvert dominant power structure, cultural hierarchies, and social norms. For example, hip hop music emerged in the 1970s as a cultural expression of African American and Latino communities in the New York City, which faced discrimination and marginalization in mainstream society. I'll offer more examples of how popular culture can be a mutual site for contestation or subversion, as we also discuss the syllabus or the course that I taught last year. But for now, popular culture can also challenge gender, race, and sexual orientation stereotypes and norms, and provide a platform for underrepresented voices to be heard. In addition to its subversive potential, popular culture can also be a site for contestation, as different groups and individuals struggle to assert their identities and values within mainstream culture. For example, debates around appropriation and authenticity in popular culture can highlight the power dynamics and tension between different cultural groups. and the ways in which cultural identities is constructed and negotiated. Now, what is anthropology of popular culture and why is it important? So, anthropology of popular culture.
I request Rajendra sir to mute the mic. Rajendra sir, please mute the mic.
Right.
Jayprakash, carry on.
Yeah. So before we move on to discuss the course that I offered last semester and my experience of offering this course, I also wanted to begin by explaining what is anthropology of popular culture and why it is important. Right. So anthropology of popular culture is a subdiscipline of anthropology that focuses on the study of popular culture, including its production, consumption, and circulation.
Rajendra sir, please mute your mic. It's creating a lot of noise and disturbance. Please mute your mic. Rana sir, if you can hear me, please mute your mic. It's very, very noisy. Rajendra, Rana sir, please mute your mic.
Okay. All right. And so basically, I wanted to explain a little bit about what is anthropology of popular culture and why it is important now more than ever. Before we move on to discuss about this course. So, anthropology of popular culture is a subdiscipline of anthropology that focuses on the study of popular culture, including its production, consumption, and circulation. And popular. So basically, anthropology, uh, anthropological methods such as ethnography, semi-structured in-depth interviews, participant observation are used to examine, uncover, and understand how popular culture sort of is produced uh, is produced in a society, and also like equally is affected by the society in return. So anthropology of popular culture is important and relevant for several reasons. First, popular culture is a significant part of modern society, and its influences extends to many areas of life, including politics, economics, and social relations. Now, anthropologists who study popular culture can help us understand how cultural products and practices are produced, consumed, and interpreted by different groups of people, as well as how they contribute to the formation of individual and collective identities. Popular culture is also, like I have mentioned a few times earlier, a site for contestation and negotiation. Cultural meanings and values are constantly being negotiated and contested. By studying popular culture, anthropologists can gain insight into the complex and dynamic ways in which cultural meanings are produced, negotiated, and transformed over time. Now, Um, last semester I offered a course, Anthropology of Popular Culture, to undergrad students, literary and cultural studies major, and one of the sort of objective of this course was to introduce the student to introduce the student to various forms of popular culture in India and abroad, and in understanding the social and political lives of popular culture. So, how do popular culture impact the social lives and political lives in the country like ours? So we began. We began with television, and um, the course, in fact, started with a screening of a documentary. The documentary is called Broadcast at 50, which provides a comprehensive overview of history of Indian television with a special focus on Doordarshan. Uh, so One of the interesting aspect of the documentary is the discussion of the relationship between Doordarshan and the Indian government. Doordarshan was initially established as a government entity and was subject to strict censorship guidelines. However, as India moved toward a more liberalized economy uh, in the 1990s, Doordarshan began to face competition from private broadcaster, which led to a loosening of the censorship restrictions. Uh, Another important reason for which I thought and we thought it's a good idea to begin the course by viewing this and responding to this documentary was because Broadcast at 50, the documentary also provides a fascinating look at the history of Indian television and the important role that Doordarshan has played in shaping the country's popular culture. So, uh, uh, so uh, so an interesting exercise. It was an interesting exercise to learn the major historical movements in the country by just following the history of Doordarshan. Um, and so my students who are in their early 20s now, are not very familiar with Doordarshan and uh, the kind of popular culture it generated in the 80s and the 90s in particular, but also after independence in general. So it was an attempt to introduce them to a popular to the history of popular culture in India through this documentary. Um, then we so to in expanding the conversation on Doordarshan, uh, we read Purnima Mankekar's book, Screening Culture and Viewing Politics, which is an ethnography of female viewers in Hindi language TV serials in northern part of India. So it's an ethnography of female viewers of Doordarshan. So Purnima Mankekar in this book largely argues that Doordarshan's programming reflects the largest social and political changes that have occurred in India since the country's independence in 1947. For example, in the 1970s and 80s, Doordarshan played a crucial role in shaping the Indian national identity and promoting a vision of Indianness that was inclusive of the country's diverse cultures and traditions. So we read particularly two chapters from this book. One on Mahabharata, particularly the chapter on multiple interpretations of Draupadi's disrobing and how it has how different audiences from different caste and community have responded to this particular episodes on Draupadi's disrobing. And the second chapter we read from the book was on militaristic nationalism and how violence is normalized in the name of nation. So we for that we read a chapter on this one. It's the chapter on Paramvir Chakra. The title of the chapter is called Air Force Women Don't Cry, Militaristic Nationalism and Representation of Gender in Paramvir Chakra. So Mankekar works provides a comprehensive look at the history and politics of Indian television and highlights the importance of understanding the role of media in shaping culture and political identities. Then we decided to shift gear and sort of calibrated our attention to some other sites from FR. So we wanted to look at some scholarship which pays particular attention to television abroad. So for that we started with we read Ugly Betty Goes Global Networks of Localized Content in the Telenovela Industry. So this article in particular explores the global success of the American television show Ugly Betty, which was a remake of Colombian telenovela Yo So Betty La Fa. The article that we read examines how globalization of television has led to the adaptation and localization of content across cultures and language. So if you remember, as you can see on screen, TV serial Jassi Jassi Koi Nahi is a Hindi adaptation of Ugly Betty, and the cultural nuances are translated quite effectively in the serial, for which it was a huge success. And the article that we read highlights the importance of understanding the global network of localized content in the telenovela industry and the impact of globalization on the media scape. Then we wanted to read more from culture abroad. So we did Leela Avilugut's article Islam and Public Culture, the politics of Egyptian television serials, which explores the role of television dramas in shaping public discourses and culture in Egypt. The article focuses on the popular Ramadan serials that are broadcasted during Muslim holy month of Ramadan, which has become a prime time television production in Egypt, where state control over the media is strong. She argues so. Leela Abulagut argues that the production of television dramas is a way for the Egyptian state to shape public discourse and reinforce national identity. We read another article by Leela Lagut, which is the interpretation of cultures after television. And so basically, in this article, she argues that advent of television has led to a shift in how we understand and interpret culture. So prior to the widespread use of television, anthropologists in particular, but also like other social scientists in general, focused on studying culture as isolated, bounded entities with their own internal logics and meaning systems. However, with the proliferation of television, cultural boundaries have become more porous and cultural meanings have become more fluid and open to interpretation. Uh, After understanding the medium, we wanted to explore more about the films and fan culture. So we decided to do SB Srinivas, megastar Chiranjeevi, and Telugu cinema after N.T. Ramarao. So one of the rationale or one of the rationale of discussing this particular book on Chiranjeevi was also to give a sense of what is South Indian film industry and fan culture look like to my students who are primarily or predominantly North Indians. Right. So S.P. Srinivas' book Megastar Chiranjeevi and Telugu Cinema after N.T. Ramarao is a comprehensive analysis of Telugu film industry with a particular focus on career of Chiranjeevi, a legendary actor and politician in Andhra Pradesh. The book examines Chiranjeevi's rise to stardom in the 1980s and his subsequent impact on Telugu cinema, as well as his foray into politics and his enduring influence on the cultural and political landscape of Andhra Pradesh. This book Megastar provides a nuanced and insightful look at the interplay between culture, politics, and commerce in the world of Telugu cinema. It sheds lights on the complex relationship between film stars, fans, politicians, and broader public, and offers a compelling portrait of a vibrant and dynamic industry that continues to evolve in response to shifting social and economic conditions. So we read the introduction and one of the chapters. The title of the chapter was "Fans, Families, and Phantom." Aluda Majaka revisited. So very interestingly, this movie Aluda Majaka was banned in Andhra Pradesh because of its explicit contents or vulgar, objectionable contents, and then a sizable contingent of fans came on the road protesting that film should be screened, should be allowed to run in theaters. So there was a very interesting sort of confrontation between state and fans. So this also sort of raises a question of whether the sort of power dynamic between the star and the fan. So we always often assume that the star has a lot of power over fans, but most of the time, as Srinivas shows in his book, that fans have a lot of power, and most of the time they run the show. Yeah. So after films and fan culture, we wanted to examine more specific sides of popular culture, and we did a few readings on singing as a political act. So for example, music and singing have often been used as a means of political expressions and resistance. This has been particularly true in India, where music has been used to voice various social, cultural, and political issues. So in recent times, so we read, and these are some of the media pieces we did. We didn't read more sort of uh, scholarship and very sort of academic papers or books, a monograph. We rather decided to do four short media pieces. So musicians and singers across the country have been performing at the protest sites, creating songs that reflect the farmer struggle and demands. And the songs those were used by the farmers in the protest sites have become anthems of resistance, inspiring and uniting protesters. So that was one. But in addition to that, we also did so another example of singing as a political act. You know, a very interesting site was also in recent years how some DJ artists, disco jockeys, artists have been creating and performing music that demonizes Muslim and promotes a message of hatred and division. Um, in addition to these two examples, um, we also read another piece where music has been used as a means of political campaigning during elections in India. During 2022 Uttar Pradesh elections, political parties released various songs that were used to appeal to voters. These songs reflected the party's ideologies and promises and were used to mobilize support. On a more positive note, music has also been used to celebrate social and political leaders who have fought for the right of the marginalized community. One example of this song is songs created by Dalit women in India to celebrate Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, a social reformer who fought for the rights of the Dalits and other marginalized community. The song celebrates Ambedkar's contributions and his visions for a more just society. So all these are very examples of music and singing and how these are used as a means of political expression, resistance, and celebration. They provide a powerful platform for voicing issues and concern, mobilizing support, and creating a sense of community and solidarity. As such, music can be a potent political act, one that has the power to shape society and inspire change. So, to bring in more diversity in the course, we also did read fashion and clothing. We began this unit or section by watching a documentary called Fashioning Faith. One of the major themes of the documentary is the role of fashion in Muslim women's lives. The film highlights how fashion can be used as a way to express one's religious and cultural identity while also challenging societal stereotypes and assumptions. So the young women featured in this film talk about how they use fashion to assert their agency and to break down the barriers between themselves and non-Muslim Americans. To complement this documentary, we read sorry uh, Emma Tarlow's Hijab in London: Metamorphosis, Resonance and Effects, published in Journal of Material Culture. So Tarlow, in this particular piece, Tarlow uses the concept of metamorphosis to describe the way in which hijab is transformed through its interaction with fashion and other cultural forms. So Tarlow argues that the hijab is not simply assimilated into British fashion culture, but rather is transformed by it, creating a new hybrid form. Tarlow also examines the resonance of hijab with British cultural values of diversity and multiculturalism, arguing that this resonance is an important factor in shaping the way in which hijab is understood and experienced by young Muslim women. Overall, Tarlow's article highlights the complex and dynamic nature of hijab as a cultural form or as a sartorial piece, and emphasizes the importance of understanding how it is transformed and reshaped through its interaction with cultural forms. So, other than these two pieces, for fashion and clothing, we also read an academic scholarly research article um, by Clara M. Wilkinson Weber, The Dressman Line: Transforming the Work of Costumers in Popular Hindi Film. So, this article is particularly about the spectral figure of costume makers or popularly known as master or dress dada in Hindi film industry. So this article sheds light on the important role that dressmen plays in the production of popular Hindi films and how their work intersects with broader cultural, social, and economic dynamics in the film industry. So it raises some of the important questions about labor, creativity, and politics of representation in popular culture. Uh, so very quickly, because the course was very diverse and we were trying to incorporate as much of popular as many forms of popular culture as we could, we also thought it would be a good idea to read some pieces from drama and theater. So, for example, we did Catherine Hanson's female impersonators in Parsi and Gujarati theater. As you can see on screen, there's a picture in the left hand side of Bal Gandharva, who was one of the earliest female impersonators, meaning men who played roles of women in theaters, in Parsi and Gujarati theaters. So we read a piece by Catherine Hanson. Then we did another piece on female impersonation in Bengali theater, Bengali Jatra theater, discussing the sort of the image or character of Chopal Vaduri. Um, yeah, so I wish I could discuss more, but in the interest of time and scope of this presentation, I would very quickly sort of summarize some other readings that we did, but also some other and more readings that we wanted to do. For example, we did calendar arts by Khajri Jain, Gods in the Bazaar, and few other sort of readings from Amar Chitra Katha and Ramcharit Manas. Uh, but more importantly, we wanted to I wish to incorporate, which I couldn't do in the last, and it's a sort of syllabus that I sort of created from scratch. So, and also it's open now, so I look forward to your feedback and comments if you have any sort of input regarding what I should incorporate, what I should probably exclude. You are welcome to do that. But I personally wanted to discuss TV series on streaming platforms and how it has come to occupy, and how TV series, for example, stories that are told on TV series today are at the so there are a lot of at the heart of many political questions. So and also wanted to explore more from political memes and other forms of visual forms, visual images that are circulated on the internet and which are very political, and primarily also sometimes used for political gain and with a political agenda. uh, but we couldn't do that, and hoping to include it in the include a section on popular literature in India. For example, chick lit or crick lit, sports literature, or scientific sci-fi, scientific fictions, and other forms of, for example, campus novels, detective fictions would have been a great sort of inclusion to discuss major sort of ideas and questions around politics, society, culture. So some of the future directions, where do I want to sort of see it. So as the as the world continues to evolve, the study of popular culture will remain an important area of inquiry for scholars across disciplines. Some potential future directions for research in the field include, it would be a good idea to also explore the intersection of popular culture with environmentalism, for example, environmental humanities or literature and climate change. Um, it would also be productive to investigate the role of popular culture in shaping attitude towards mental health and wellness. Uh, Last but not least, analyzing the ways in which popular culture is being used as a tool for political activism and social change can be a productive exercise as well. So, in conclusion, um, anthropology of popular culture is a fascinating and rapidly growing subdiscipline that offers insight into the complex relationship between culture, power, and identity. By studying the ways in which popular culture is produced, consumed, and contested, scholars can gain a deeper understanding of the ways in which societies are constructed and maintained. Through case studies that focus on specific form of popular culture, we have seen how anthropologists in particular, but other social scientists and practicing uh, uh, social scientists that focus on specific forms of popular, we have seen how scholars across discipline have used a variety of theoretical frameworks and research method to unpack the meanings and effects of popular culture. So as we continue to explore this field, we can expect to gain new insights into the dynamic of ever-changing landscape of popular culture and the ways in which it both reflects and shapes our social world. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Jayprakash. And now the floor is open for question answer or any comments or observation if students and all other participants have. Okay, maybe I will start. I'll start with.
Sure.
It's not a question, but I was just wondering. So now we have high culture, all right, and we have low culture. Where does the folk stand in herein? Folk culture stands herein. The debate between high culture and folk culture, the debate between high culture and popular culture, which is also known as the low culture, where does the folk culture stands? And now we have seen a kind of shift in the representation of folk culture in the form of folk becoming popular, becoming pop in the form of remix, revival, and all, right? And this is something I'm researching. I'm going to present a paper on that, very soon at Commonwealth Literary Association conference. So I'm just wondering, where does the folk stand? That is one thing. Another question is like, whenever we talk about popular literature or pulp fiction, popular culture, we have certain parameters that we always try to incorporate literature from the West, right? We do not want to. There was a huge debate going on when I was working at Delhi University. There was this huge debate and huge fight that went on whether to incorporate Chetan Bhagat's work in the syllabus or not. So now, on the one hand, we understand, there are things which are problematic when we talk about Chetan Bhagat, of course, but at the same time, to think of the Western, Western literature only as the kind of, a popular literature, and not acknowledging the works of, like that of Chetan Bhagat, also to draw a parallel or draw a comparison between these two different, from the East and from the West, we don't want to acknowledge his work. So how do you look at that also? These are the two questions I've been thinking of, engaging with.
Right.
Right.
Thank you so much, Jarna, for this very pertinent questions. And I'm not really sure whether I have a very specific answer to this, but I'll try to respond. And this is very fascinating, for particularly the dichotomous framework of high culture and low culture sometimes also do not hold true. For example, the lines between high culture and low culture can be blurred significantly as well. And the example that you gave, how folk culture is sort of also turning into a popular culture, right? For example, there's also a friend of mine who primarily works on how Jhumur Nach from West Bengal, Jhumur performers are also sort of enacting, recording, and putting these performances on digital platforms, and how folk culture is now sort of turning into popular culture, widely available and accessible to be consumed by a sort of more mass audience. Yeah, I just wanted to I'm not sure whether I responded to your question, but I'll go back and check, and then we can discuss more. But the second question, which I also personally find very sort of fascinating, also amusing to some extent, is that the idea of decolonizing literature, or decolonizing popular literature in India. For example, you're absolutely right when you said that there is a particular sort of bias that that is generally seen while sort of incorporating Indian pulp fiction or campus fictions, or all kinds of you know not so dominant and mainstream forms of literature, uh, but at the same time we are very sort of welcoming to let's say Agatha Christie, or all kinds of detective or pulp fictions. So I think it's good that the conversation has begun, and I think mostly the new emerging departments of literature and literary and cultural studies are welcoming these inclusion, which is of course welcome change. So yeah, we hope to see more of these.
Yeah, we have actually Chetan Bhagat now in the syllabus. So before incorporating it in the syllabus, which we have followed, the model which we have followed, of course, we have like somehow imitated the DU one anyway. So there was this huge debate and fight. Even Chetan Bhagat had to go ahead and write it on Facebook why the DU intelligentsia, they are not ready to accept him see him as a writer of pulp fiction and all. So that is what I was wondering. Anyway, thank you very much for your well-conceived answer, JP. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Dhananjay sir has raised his hand. Sir, do you have any question for Jayprakash?
Thank you, Jharna ma'am. Thank you. I am audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, all of you, and thanks to Dr. Jayprakash Mishra for wonderful presentation. And he has talked about the course he has developed for PG student or UG student, sir?
This is for undergrad, UG
undergrad.
student.
Okay. Actually, a small observation in this that in India, in mid 80s or 90s, there are so much of televisions like satirical flop show, which you can include in this.
Yeah.
And also, we have हम लोग telenovela in you have told about the telenovela.
Yeah.
And how a writer, both writer, the Single and Roger, in a journal paper of Indian Institute of Mass Communication has mentioned the butterfly effect of हम लोग. How हम लोग started from Peru. In there the telenovela called Simpleton Maria, and it's meant for promoting the adult education, basically adult education, and it talks about the story how a simple housemaid becomes a fashion designer. And copied from that in Mexico 1975, one telenovela is Von Camingo. In this also family planning and adult education was the theme. And one of the producer of this telenovela, Sabito, was roped for planning commission of India. And in this, Indira Gandhi and S.S. Gill, and with the Hindi writer, that is Manohar Shyam Joshi, wrote to construct the Hum Log. And Hum Log was, already know, because you have that age, so I think must know that Hum Log, what is the social issues which tells like dowry, adult educations, this telenovela tells. But in now generation, in our students, like students of 19, 20, 21, they don't understand, probably they do not know about that. So it would be good to include this things or this article, Singles Rogers article in your course syllabus. I think this will be useful to you.
Thank you so much, Dhananjay sir. We need to tell more of these stories to students. and I'm going to write to you. I mean, if that is okay. And
Yes. It's perfectly okay. Perfectly okay. Yes.
yeah, and we can have more conversations. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anandit sir. Now we have Dr. Tyagraj Thakur. He has raised his hand. So over to you, Tyagraj.
Yeah, hi JP, this is Tyagaraja. Hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions over here. It was, first of all, congratulations for this wonderful anthropology evolution of popular culture that you have showed to us. It was stimulating, and in fact, I thoroughly enjoyed, engrossed I was. I would like to make 2 points. When I go back to my childhood days, the early 90s, we were watching. I don't know whether we made sense then. I mean, those were making sense, but we probably couldn't get enough of it. If you remember a television show Shanti,
Yes.
by Mandira Bedi.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so it ran for about some 1,000 episodes. I think close to 2,000 episodes. It was so empowering. It was so progressive in its attitude. It was in the early 90s. We had another thing. The character of Shwetalana in Swabhiman. There was again a brilliant show. I think in the late 80s, I'm not sure, we had another uh, show like Bunyas in the television. But there comes a time with technological evolution, technological improvement, we should become more scientific in nature, ideally. But what we see in the millennials see today is something different. The progressive attitude that was shown way back in the early 90s is not seen in today's movies, screens, silver screens. Like today's, we have supernatural elements, Nagin, conspiracies, and the fights that are not progressive much in nature. They're more constructs of patriarchy. Ideally, they should be more progressive in 30 years down the line. Does it have any kind of a political agenda behind not being so progressive, despite being 30 years of technological evolution we have had? And second question I have with me is, if you look at the Western Odisha folk culture that we have here, it has been represented somehow by some movies like Bhuka. I think it was made in the 90s again. Recently, the two renditions we have through Salah Budha and Adim Vichar. So these have been phenomenal movies to showcase. But I don't know why. What could be the reason, if you could share? It hasn't probably got the kind of light it should get at a pan-India level. And not just Bhuka. There are so many other local folk cultures from different parts of India that we also don't know about. There could be umpteen number of things. What do you think? What do you suggest to bring in this folk culture on the media screen for a pan-India screening of pan-India, say, reception? So these two questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tyagaj, for this very comprehensive, detailed questions. I am definitely, I'll try to respond to both the questions, but I'm sure it requires more sort of conversation and dialogue, right? So in retrospect, yes, Shanti and the character of the figure of Shanti or Shwetlana, for that matter, were very progressive, liberal, postmodern women, right? But then when you look at the representation of gender or evolution of representation of gender over a period of time, you also sort of notice that earlier there used to be a very dichotomous representation, either the the female character is either a damsel in distress or a femme fatale, right? So but then Shanti, I think, or I don't know, I'll have to go back and maybe check where what is this evolution of representation of gender on TV screen like. I'm not really sure if there is a political agenda behind dumbing it down to characters like Nagins, or I'm not really sure, for the lack of a better word, dumbing down probably makes sense now. but I'm not really sure about whether there is a political agenda behind it, but it's a very important question, I think.
I think I'll just sort of add to what Tyagraj has said. If you look at the progress of all the television serial, especially in Doordarshan, and what is happening in all this star power, star parivar, and all, you see that those serials, the progression, the way Tyagraj highlighted, it also coincides somehow with the rise of bourgeois nationalism. All right, and where morality is the key to everything, right? So we have to project an image of an Indian woman who is moral, who has the moral high ground, who is doing a lot of nice things and all. She's no more Shanti or the aura that the kind of woman whom we used to watch before 90s, right? So I think one of the article, I'm just forgetting the name of the article, where the author talks about how it coincides with the rise of bourgeois nationalism, where morality is everything, and looking and coming back to Indian myth and Indian mythology and the idea of Indian woman, that has to be projected more, like Nagin ho gaya, ya fir all these things which are located in the heart of India, right? Indian, only when in India we have this Nagin, Uchadhari Nagin culture and all this. So I think that is also one thing. So just wanted to add to that.
But then you're absolutely right, Jharna. Thank you so much for bringing in that. But I also think that Indian television today, or for example, web platforms today, is definitely more diverse and inclusive today, where there are more diverse representation. For example, the kind of women character that we see today are definitely more diverse. For example, it's okay to be this femme fatale, or there are very interesting female characters which are unapologetically themselves, right? And then we also have more queer characters, queer romances, without sort of projecting the victimhood that used to be the that used to be this sort of center of all these stories. But now we have, I think, more diverse and inclusive stories. I also wanted to very quickly respond to your second question of folk culture, particularly from the western part of Odisha, represented in television. Sorry, represented in cinema in particular. So I really hope that these films. So I really hope that the mic is passed on to people. Like people should be able to tell their own stories, right? I think what Sabyasachi Mahapatra and the group team crew has done is amazing, absolutely fascinating. But I think it's also high time that we start passing on the mic, where people should be able to tell their own stories from the own community. For example, we need more Dalit Adivasis, director, producers, content creators, writers, who would be who should be rather able to or enabled to tell their own stories.
We have Sonali Supriya now, a research scholar. I think she had a question. Sonali?
Thank you for the answers.
Thank you, ma'am. Hello, sir. You have answered most of you've given a lot of answer to my question already with Tyagrat sir's question. My question is related to serial, because towards the end of your lecture, you were talking a bit about the daily soap operas and all. Unlike movies, this is something we consume on a daily basis, really wait for. And growing up, when you grow up with one television, now it's very different. We have the OTT and all, so you have each. And everybody has a phone, and they choose what they want to watch. But it wasn't so in the early 2000s and until late even. So my question is, when we see after Ekta Kapoor's coming into the television era, we see a change in how the storyline is, how the characters are represented. Do we also see a play of gender here? Because when we talk about serials, we mostly think that it's the lady, it's a woman of the house, or or the kids, like, unfortunately, because they have to watch what the mother is watching, they don't have the remote in their hand. But when you're talking about movies as such, we see that it's more catered to the other gender, to the males generally. When we watch movies, let's say the South Indian movies, we also see the representation of power in a very obvious and violent manner. The man there has a lot of power, he's out there, he's going and fighting. But when we look at serials, it's very subtle. The problem there is very, very subtle. The women does not have much power, and the violence there is also very, very subtle. So my question is whether while making, is it that they're consciously making it to cater to a certain gender, or it just becomes so,
Yeah, thank you so much, Sonali, for this very provocative question. Uh, I probably I don't have an answer to this right now, but gender representation is also a very strategic choice, I think, in TV serials and soap operas in particular, and the content. So if you look at anthropological research and scholarship on OTT platforms or on cinema for that matter, or any other sort of social media for that matter, uh, the content that people create is very strategically done. So there is this team sitting there deciding, do we need a token queer character in this serial? Do we need, so what percentage of TRP will increase if we bring in a more sort of powerful women character or empowered women character? So it's very strategically done, I have been told. uh, uh, and you're absolutely right about the subtle representation, subtle power, subtle ways in which power is exudes in uh, soap opera, whereas it's very explicitly done in movies, for example, South Indian movies. But these are also very strategic, conscious, informed choices that people, the content creators, make, I think.
Thank you, JP. Now we have Sanjeev sir on the board. So yes, sir.
Yes, I will listen, JP. Yeah, Tegraj, go ahead. Tegraj,
Yeah,
go
no,
ahead.
I don't have a question actually. I think I have a, we have one, I have a friend of mine who has joined this no, webinar. He's a professor of English, but he's himself a media creator and he's a film director. Srinivas, I think, Luju, from Hyderabad. He teaches in the University of Chaitanya Bharati Institute of Technology. So he is guiding a team of students with short films, documentary films. Maybe that's what I was trying to pitch in, like popular culture, cinema, and here there is a creator. If we can have a dialogue also. But yes, Sanjeev, please go ahead. So I just wanted to pitch in here.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you, JP, and congratulations for the wonderful, stimulating talk that you delivered today. My question is, like in the past, we have seen various, movies, even texts, books. They have been, being registered because they, challenge the dominant ideology that prevail in the country. Mostly in the mass media and popular culture, books are retained. They are not allowed to see the day of light. Sometimes movies are asked to be edited, asked to be, restrictions are imposed. So how do, because it is stifling of these, voices. So how does, popular culture, deal with or negotiate with this?
Right. No, thank you so much for raising that question, Sanjeev. I am sure many people here will agree that we live in a very difficult time, in a different time. And in retrospect, I mean, I'm not really sure whether we have come to sort of come to a space where we are allowed to produce, consume, and circulate the content that we want to. Um, and I'm also not a great fan of romanticizing the sort of pre-colonial past, or uh, or immediate past. Uh, so So in that context, I'm not really sure whether it's a sort of very interesting juncture. Uh, I'm not really sure whether you can really create, consume and circulate content that you really want to, all kinds of content right now. Uh, yeah. So but we live in the hope. So yeah, very hopeful about it.
Yes, what is popular in fact is the culture of boycott and culture of censorship, if I may be allowed to say so. Now we have the next person here with us, and I invite Srinivas sir to ask his question.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a very interesting talk. I'm Srinivas Handaki from Hyderabad, and thank you, Tyagi, for good words. So, I am interested in the realistic side of social anthropology, and I felt very excited when you talked about Chiranjeevi's movie and how it's, brought back the screening. I am from a place, Hyderabad is a place where a mass person, if earns 500 rupees, spends 250 for a beer and then another 250 for a movie ticket.
Yeah.
So that's where he finds satisfaction for the day. So my question is, what empowers um, an audience in that way, anthropologically, uh, you know, uh, to influence what elements of social realism, empower people to be controlling, media production and control the actors and heroes. Could you just throw some light on that, sir?
Right. No, thank you so much for joining. It's been a sort of pleasure to have you here. Um, yeah, to respond to your question, I mean, I haven't actually read much regarding the fan culture or fandom in for example South Indian film industry, but my work actually led me to do a little bit of research on fandom. So for example Madhav Prasad's work, or for example S.V. Srinivasa's work have been very sort of uh, important, relevant to the kind of work I do. I think so when I said in my talk, so I think fan have equal power over the star, uh, as much as the star have the power over the fans, because there have been, so for example S.V. Srinivasa's book is replete with examples where fan have taken over all kinds of charitable charitable work, charity work that they do, or philanthropic work that they are involved in, and they do it not just for the star but also for sort of an establishing or asserting an identity for themselves, that oh, I am the sort of one of the biggest fans of XYZ, or XYZ star. When I said fan have a lot of power, counterintuitively than we imagine them, more power than we imagine them to have, I actually meant on occasions they take over and they have sort of equal, if not more power over others. Yeah. But I would also like to hear from you if you have any response to that, or if you want to add on to this.
Yeah, I was going through a few works like Q&A by Vikas Swaroop, and how it was a social realistic drama was translated onto a screen like Slumdog Millionaire, and what made Slumdog Millionaire to be and all that. So that's why I was very much interested in your talk. This is on popular culture, and also there is this anthropological side to it. So I was very curious as how and what elements empower the masses, especially the poor, the realistic circumstances in Dharavi, for example, or the low-lying places of Hyderabad. What actually empowers these people to influence and make their life and lifestyle so popular and come on to the mainstream?
Yeah, so I mean, I also feel that one of the important sort of purpose that film or cinema serves is also making life a little bearable, if not making them feel powerful. So, like you said, the general public, the general public knows where their priorities are. So, like getting a beer and getting a movie ticket are some of the priorities which are sorted, right? And so, which way by consuming these sort of content also help them sort of making their life a little bearable, I think.
That's interesting. Yeah, I agree with you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much. Thank you so much, Srinivas sir, and thank you so